Hey you guys, this is Jeremy with In The DAW. Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the newest Reverb plugin from Nomad Factory that is going to be their 80's spaces. This is a really cool convolution reverb plugin that we're going to be taking a look at and seeing how it sounds. Really quickly before we get started though, I want to give a quick shout out to Plugivery for contacting us and hooking us up with a copy. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to do this video. With that said, let's just jump straight into it. All right, you guys. So as you see here, this is the Nomad Factory's 80's Spaces. Now, this is in association with Morvox, I believe it's pronounced, and they have come together to create a very, very powerful convolution reverb plugin. Now, one thing I want to mention to you is the delay or the latency of this plugin. Most convolution reverbs have a very long delay, whereas this 80's Spaces, let me set this to name, you'll see only has a latency of 1.3 milliseconds. This is ridiculously short. And convolution reverbs tend to use a ton of latency because it's impulse responses and a lot of CPU to do all the math. So I don't know what type of voodoo they did to make this so short and so efficient, but I love it. Now, the interface is extremely smooth, extremely simple to understand, and it has this very vintage style look to it. I really like it. It looks like a little rack mount unit. And the controls are super simple. You have your preset menu, you have your A/B switch, you have your on and off switch, and then you can open up your manual here. You have this awesome little window, which tells you the exact model of the impulse you're using, and it tells you the type, and it tells you the timing. You can also click here on the waveform view, and this will actually show you the waveform of the impulse. So if I change the impulses up, you'll see it changes every time. And when I change certain features like the decay and the attack time and the gate, is going to reflect that as well. So it's a really great way of seeing what you're doing as well as hearing it. To the right of this nice blue window, we have the meters. And then under all of that, we have the input, mix knob, and output knob. Mix is your dry wet, input is your input, output is your output. Directly to the right of this, we have our selectors for the slopes of the low and high pass filters. This goes from 6 dB octave slopes all the way to 24. You simply just click to select them. And then we have the main controls. This is pre-delay, attack, decay, gate, low cut, high cut, chorus, and width. They're pretty self-explanatory. The pre-delay is the pre-delay of the reverb itself. Let's say you have a pre-delay of 35 milliseconds. When you send the signal through it, it'll wait 35 milliseconds before triggering the reverb. The attack control works a little bit differently though. It basically skews the attack of the reverb itself. So if I turn it a little bit, you'll see that it kind of changes the way that the impulse looks and loads up. And it can kind of give you this very slowly swelled up kind of reverb sound where it kind of makes the impulse take a little bit longer to fully trigger. So it will be triggering even if you have it at a pre-delay of 0. But if your attack is maxed out, it'll slowly dive into the reverb. And it kind of helps you get a much smoother sound out of this type of reverb, which is really cool. The decay is simply just the decay time. And the gate function is really cool because it actually helps you create a gated reverb sound, which is heard in a lot of older records, a lot of Phil Collins and stuff like that. Low and high cuts work just like what they say. They cut the low end and the high end. You have the chorus, which will add a little bit of spaciousness and a little bit of movement to your left and right. And then your width, which controls the stereo width. 50% is a lot narrower. It's never fully mono. And then 200 is super wide. One thing that I do hope gets added is a mono section for the width control because I would love to be able to have this as a mono reverb. Now, as far as impulses that you have a ton of halls, a bunch of rooms, a ton of plates, some ambiances, and some miscellaneous stuff. Your presets are pretty vast. You have more presets than I would probably ever use. And some of them are emulating some vintage style gear. And a really cool thing is if you go to the info section, you'll notice that some of these are actually impulses of some pretty iconic or retro pieces of gear. So pretty cool. With that said, that's pretty much it for the overview. It's extremely easy to use, extremely fast and simple to operate. Now, the thing that I'm thinking and that I'm sure you're thinking is how does it sound though? So what I'm going to do is play you a couple of tracks. Let's play this piano real quick. And I have my piano send right here, and this is the gated fence room reverb preset. I've kind of tweaked it a little bit, and let's see what this sounds like on this piano. I'm going to start with it bypassed. And turn it on, and let's make sure we play it right away. You'll notice that it has a very subtle sound, but listen to that decay. I'm going to bring up the reverb quite a bit. You hear that very short decay, and that's because I have the decay time very short. But what happens if I have it all the way out? Notice that it doesn't sound harsh at all. A little bit of a low end buildup, which is very easy to fix. I'm just going to use the low cut filter. Pretty cool, right? It sounds pretty good, but watch what happens if I utilize this gate function. You hear that decay suddenly just disappear? It's still there, watch, when I bypass it. Really cool, right? Now, obviously, I'm overloading this with reverb right now, but another thing I want to show you is the pre-delay section itself. When you change this while it's playing audio through it, it's actually going to pitch the signal up and down, which is pretty cool because it gives you a very smooth analog style pre-delay instead of it glitching out and popping and cracking like in a lot of digital plugins. So let me show you this. Pretty cool, right? So imagine what you could do if you automate something like this. Now that is on a grand piano that has a little bit too much reverb on it. So let's try this out on this guitar right here. So we have it on the acoustic guitar. Listen to that decay. A lot more subtle, a lot more thin. And that's because we're using a thin plate. So let's take a listen to this. Bypass it. Back on. It just gives it a very subtle sense of space. Now, that's it for the subtle examples. Let's go for something a little bit more extreme. I have this drum kit right here. Let's play it. Very dead, right? And this is a multi-track drum kit, so there is going to be a little bit of bleed. Right? So what I want to do is I want to get this snare to have a lot of crack, and I want it to be very, very sustained. So let's go for maybe right around here. Right? And let's see what happens if we throw it onto the drum reverb. We have the drum reverb set pretty stock. It's not going to be doing anything crazy, but I want to see what a digital #1 hall sounds like with nothing going on besides the impulse. Listen to that decay. This is a digital impulse, so it's going to have a little bit of harshness, but it still doesn't sound very harsh. And I want to show you what harsh sounds like. I have this recording of a cheap reverb unit that was used for this recording. And listen to the harsh high end that comes into this. This is an actual unit. That is harsh. That sounds really harsh. Let's compare that to the impulse. It has the same style of sound, but it has a much thicker and smoother decay. Let's try one of these rooms. That sounds like a room. For something like this, we could just increase the pre-delay and slow down the attack. That sounds pretty cool. Let's try one of these plates. Let's go for a dark plate. Now, this is going to be pretty cool because I want to show you this gated reverb trick. We're going to have the gate pretty much set to as fast as it can go. And now we're going to increase the chorus. Now let's take off the gate. Slowly bring it in. Pretty cool, right? Most reverb plugins are not going to allow you to do all of that in such a smooth and efficient way. I'm actually really liking this. I think that we're not going to use the gated reverb trick because this is kind of a pop ballad. It's not a Phil Collins song, so we don't really need it. Let's shorten up the decay just to make it a little bit shorter. And let's have a slower attack time. And we're going to cut out just a little bit of low end and just a little bit of high end. Let's bring down this chorus. Notice how we get a much cleaner sound without the chorus. And with it, you just hear a little bit more movement. I think just 20% of the chorus is going to be good for this. And let's mess around with the width control. Make it wide. Something like that sounds perfect. So now what I want to do is send this to the hi-hats, send this to the toms, send this to my overheads, and I'm going to pan my floor tom just a little bit. Same thing with my hi-hats. Keep my snare in the middle, and I'm going to actually crank the snare. So let's solo up the drum kit, and let's see what this sounds like. Let's compare that to the original reverb box that we had. And let's actually compare that with the drum kit. And with the reverb. Much nicer. Let's listen to that in the mix. Without it. And with it back on. It just has a very natural sound. Let's see what the original reverb sounds in the mix. It just doesn't sound good at all, does it? Let's try a different plate because maybe because we're using the dark plate, it sounds a little bit too natural. So let's try this thin plate. And let's take all the low and high cuts out. No, even with this thin plate, it sounds more real. And I actually really like the decay. Let's try that out in the mix. Pretty cool, right? I really like the way that this thing sounds. For my first impressions, I was blown away with the quality. I know Nomad Factory has made some great plugins in the past, but I was not aware that they were making these great reverbs. With that said, that's going to be it for this video. I highly recommend you try this out. Grab a demo. Thanks again to Plugivery for contacting us and hooking us up with a copy and helping us make this video. So check out Plugivery and check out Nomad Factory if you want to pick this up. That's going to be it for this part of the video. I will see you guys in a few seconds. All right, you guys. So that was Nomad Factory's 80's Spaces. This is a really powerful convolution reverb that has a little bit of controls that you don't normally see in most convolution reverb plugins. In my opinion, I actually really like this plugin, and I think it has a very cool vintage retro-y sound that can fit in a lot of situations. Once again, I'd like to thank Plugivery for contacting us and hooking us up with this copy. This is Jeremy with In The DAW, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.